Once again, good morning, everybody. As the previous moderator told us that you had a quite interesting evening yesterday, but then we are going to proceed with quite interesting morning sessions today. My name is Mārtiņš Mūrnieks, and I work for the Black Sea Trust for the regional cooperation, which is the part of the German Marshall Fund, and also part of the donor community working in the Black Sea region. And in a way, it's not coincidence that I'm moderating this session, because the session is very much on the ways, the mechanisms, tools to support the civil society, but in a very broad sense and broad understanding. Before we go down and hit the road for the speakers' interventions, I want to remind you that we are also online on a web stream. And we have a big hopes that there are even more people listening and seeing us than here this morning, here the face-to-face. And the web streams are put on the presidency's web page and also our partners' web pages. And if those who tweet, you are very warmly welcomed to use the hashtag like the EAPCSC. That one you see also in your materials. I think this session has a potential to be one of the most engaging and most interactive, because it's also very much about money, but not only because of that, but because also right after us there will be the ministers, the ones who take decisions or the ones who cannot take decisions. So please be critical, but also be very constructive in your critics and your suggestions. This is, in a way, how I would like to see this session going on, and also this session could kind of, in a way, move also to next session where those good things what we come up on this session, we can move straight away to the commissioner and also to our ministers. But then let me introduce now with the first of our speakers. From my left is Andrei Yaharov, Director of the Center of European Transformations, and also he is the Belarus country facilitator and co-chair of the steering committee of the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum. And Andrei, is something like 6-7 minutes for you.
Thank you. It's very hard to speak after the previous panelists, because it's almost all their main things has been said about civil society support and about all their own means how to support civil society activity in Eastern Partnership. And if to summarize this, the main thing is political means of support. There we are looking for more enabling environment in our countries for civil society activities, meaning political environment, legal environment for civil society, less restrictive laws applied by our governments towards civil society, and as well better financial conditions for civil society operations. As you know, in Belarus and also now in Azerbaijan and Russia, and it was an attempt in Ukraine in previous year to introduce the restrictive law or for the financial operations of their civil society organization, and this is a current challenge for our countries. And the second political mean is to support trilateral dialogue between civil society, European Union and national governments about the reforms and transformation processes. We need more political engagement at the national level and also at the level of Eastern Partnership into formation of the political agenda for our countries and for our region. And last but not least, we need more institutional role into the cooperation between European Union and partner countries. Because civil society needs at least possibilities of institutional monitoring of what's going on in different sectors of cooperation. And we need to to support watchdog function of civil society organizations and give them institutional possibilities to provide alternative reports in different spheres of cooperation in Eastern Partnership. But this all has been said primarily, and I'm happy that ideas are spreading around, and we have this in our recommendations. And that's now for me it's a challenge to maybe provide some reflections on on the situation in development aid and democracy support and financial means how to support civil society. And here I have more questions than really answers. And first of all, there is no, in my view, universal means to support civil society activities. If to talk about how to support civil society, we should think about particular frames, and first of all about our aims. What do we want to support? And second, we should reflect on current situation and circumstances of its support and current challenges in this. And if to talk about the aims at the very beginning of Eastern Partnership, I believe that the main aim of the game is to help our countries in the transformation processes, in their way of reforms from post-Soviet type of societies towards contemporary democracy and European countries. But for now, I'm not sure that Eastern Partnership and current European policy directed to facilitation of change in our countries because of different geopolitical obstacles in this situation. But in any case, I think that rationally is good to keep this aim of transformation for our countries. And to think about support of civil society in these particular frames. And the second thing in this is that current model of the development aid and democracy support is not very effective in supporting transformations. We have a huge donor enterprise with different donors, different funds, different aid providers, and so on. It sometimes creates a situation of a serpentarium of friends with different attitudes, strategies, means of support. It is good in implementing quite good projects of service providing, but it's not so effective change. And moreover, this system in a great extent oriented on support of traditional NGOs. Stable, well-managed, transparent, professional. But in the case of traditional NGOs and service providers, this traditional NGO contributed more to the stabilization of the societies and political regime, either democratic regimes or authoritarian ones. Recent 5 years, the main actors of change at the early stage of transformations especially were non-organized, spontaneous movements and informal civic groups like Euromaidan or people's movements of Arab Spring. But could we imagine the application from Euromaidan to the development aid and democracy support system to the traditional donors? What Euromaidan could propose? No guarantees of results, no credit history, or even bad credit history, because first Euromaidan was not so successful, ununderstandable management, risks of revolution and possible war, which donor could decide to support such kind of activities. So till the moment, there is no proper means of support of these informal and spontaneous groups. And in case of Ukraine, for example, these voluntary movements now is the main drivers of civil society in the Ukraine, and we don't have proper means to support this activity. A part of these things about thinking about new means of supporting this spontaneous group, we also should think about less engagement of European civil society into their support of civil society of Eastern Partnership countries, because we see a reduction of the interest among European Union people and civil society towards East, and in case, for example, for our Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, we have less and less participants from their European NGOs in our activities. As well, at the beginning of 90s and the end of 80s, we have a huge people movements around Europe which are willing to support transformation on post-Soviet countries. Now there is completely different situation. Then Europeans do not want to see us, Eastern European countries, into the family of European states. And this is also a big, big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. There are really two things which struck my mind and which also comes from yesterday about this involvement of European partners, stakeholders, NGOs, and their interest. But here I would also like to strengthen another element, like the vice versa, how the Eastern Partnership countries can advocate in a way for themselves. I remember yesterday was a question from the audience on that, or the comment that we see less and less public voices when something is going on bad happening in the Eastern Partnership region. There's like less and less the demonstrations in front of the embassies in the Western Europe, on the more maybe to the some better level in the Central and Eastern Europe. So I would see this as a very both-way process, and the point is very to the ground. Let's go forward, and the next would be Viktor Chirila from Moldova, who is the Executive Director of the Foreign Policy Association and has been with association already for a quite long time. Please, Viktor.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. I'm glad to be here, and I use this opportunity to thank very much the organizer for the excellent organization of this event, and I hope that, and I'm sure that our debates will bring a valuable input to revitalizing Eastern Partnership in the future. I think the Eastern Partnership gave to Moldova quite crucial opportunities. So far, we used them quite efficiently. Now it's time to move forward. And of course, this depends not only on EU and the Eastern Partnership as such, but also on Moldova and its civil society. Yesterday, some of our colleagues and EU officials mentioned that we need a vibrant and vocal civil society. But my question to you is, do we have now a vibrant civil society in our country, in our countries? As it comes to Moldova, I would say, no, we still don't have a vibrant civil society, because civil society is not represented by non-governmental organizations. Civil society, it's about ordinary people. It's about their engagement in everyday life of their communities. It's about their rights. Do they know their rights? Do they use their rights? Do they defend their rights? And I have to say that majority of Moldovans ignore their rights. They get involved in their community life just in 4 years, one time in 4 years, when they do elect their local authorities. After that, they expect that local authorities will do their job, will change their life in their communities, will solve their problems. We need to change this attitude. And how? I think it's a question for everybody. And the answer doesn't lie only in the money. We have a lot of money coming from the European Union, more than before, much more than before. But again and again, we are speaking about unsustainable civil society organizations, unsustainable civil society as such. Why? Because I think that we need to put focus on the strengths of civil society. And the strengths of civil society are engagement, our knowledge, our experience, our network. These assets should be developed. These assets should be used much more wisely than before. I think that EU and also our authorities and non-governmental organizations in Moldova should encourage, should promote, should facilitate development of community leaders in our villages, in our cities. And I think that this can be done if we will encourage the most active actors of our society, and I mean the youth and also economic enterprises, economic business community, to change their mentality, to have a civic and community approach to their businesses, to engage in development of their businesses, also civil society actors, people that in a way or another are affected by their activities. We need also to build partnerships between civil society, local civil society in our communities, and local authorities and business communities. And the European Union has very good examples how to do this. For instance, I know that after the enlargement in 2004, in many Central European countries and also Baltic countries, with the assistance of European Union, these countries set up so-called local action groups for rural development. And all these actors are actively involved in developing their local communities, in developing, putting forward common projects, joint projects that will improve their day-to-day life. This is just one example, but there are many, many examples that should be replicated in our countries. At the same time, I think that we in Moldova have a very vocal non-governmental organizations community. They are very vocal, sometimes very noisy, but again, they are unsustainable. They continue to be very much dependent on donors, majority of them. Moreover, majority of them don't lack experience, lack knowledge, lack trust. And we have to challenge these weaknesses. And I think that money, of course, can help us to deal with these problems. But again, the answer lies with us. We need to increase our ability to help local authorities, civil societies in our villages, our cities, to improve their network. Network not only inside Moldova, but network with their partners in the European Union. in the other Eastern Partnership countries. Because we have to recognize that the most vibrant and vocal civil society community, non-governmental civil society community, is located in Chisinau, in capital. Many of them don't have even activities in the villages. Only in the recent years, some of our organizations started to extend our coverage of our activities in the villages. So we need to give more focus, to put more emphasis on building a network inside the country, help civil society organizations in the villages, in our communities, to strengthen their capabilities, to strengthen their assets, like knowledge, like experience, in order to be more active in changing their realities in the local, in their communities. Okay, I shall stop here, but of course I am open to your question and commentaries. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that we'll come back to the capacity issue because I do have already a couple of questions, but then we'll do this after all the speakers have done the presentations. And now, please, Bakhtiar Aslan Bailey from the Baku State University, plus also other academic institutions and positions you've been involved throughout your career. Please.
Thank you very much. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, actually, I'm in my capacity of independent academician rather than representing the other institutions. Basically, before going straight to the subject of the panel, let me just a bit elaborate about the main existing format of Eastern Partnership countries, basically. Eastern Partnership as a program has been relaunched a few times over the past few years. And if you look back to 2009, the format, I would say, there was a 4+2. 4 for the Guam countries plus Armenia and Belarus. Those Guam countries at that time already had certain level of the alignment, certain level of the cooperation, and certain level of the common strategies and common foreign policy priorities. By adding additional 2 countries, the EU and the Eastern Partnership Program tried to actually build up the same level of the alignment with adding certain European values and certain European aspirations to the wider geography of the countries. So then we moved to the format of 6. Today, by saying today, I mean the post-Vilnius environment, where the format is slightly changed. The format currently is 3+2+1. And the 3 stands for the countries that clearly defined their future with the European Union and has signed the EU association agreement with the EU. 2, Armenia and Belarus, who preferred to join the customs union and the Eurasian Union, but at the same time keep the relationship with the Eastern Partnership Program. And 1 stands for Azerbaijan, who basically, as one of my colleagues said, has chosen not to choose between Brussels and Moscow. So we decided not to join customs union, not to join the Eurasian Union, but at the same time, not to sign association agreement with the EU, but still continue the relationship, still continue the cooperation within the program. With that sense, I would like to again to refer to what Ambassador Poikans yesterday mentioned, the fact that the association agreement has not been signed by certain countries doesn't mean that we should abandon the relationship with those countries. And indeed, those relationships have to continue, especially if we take into account the geopolitical realities, if we take into account the political developments of the last few months, years actually, I believe we need even more precisely, even more actively engage with those countries, especially I'm talking about Azerbaijan in this case. Being the only country in the world having the borders both with Russia and Iran, we are in an extremely complicated geopolitical situation. And if we add on top of that the current energy projects which are aiming at transporting the resources of the Caspian to the Europe, that would even expose the level of the risk, level of the security risk to even the higher level. And signing the association agreement and going with straightly to the closer relationship with the EU could have caused actually certain security problems. But at the meantime, the cutting those links could create actually even more serious issues. So therefore, I believe the Eastern Partnership perspectives for non-signing countries, especially for Azerbaijan, should be elaborated, and from both sides, from the country's perspective and also from the European Union perspective, in order not to leave Azerbaijan and other countries in a more favorable to Russia position, and then just to keep those existing relationships and even extend those relationships with the European Union. Then the question is, what could be done? I would again refer to Mr. Barroso's statement when he, at the signing ceremony of the association agreement, he mentioned that actually for those three countries signing the association agreement, this is not the end of the road, it's just the beginning of the journey. And indeed, it's beginning of the journey. Destination might not be fully clear, but it's definitely beginning of the journey. And I would say the Riga summit could be actually the beginning of the journey for the other three countries. Beginning of the journey with the clear destinations for those countries who preferred not to sign association agreement. And that's the decision, a sovereign decision of the countries, need to be taken into account and continue from that perspective. So what could be done, again, back to my question? I believe with those countries, EU and Eastern Partnership need to apply at the bolder level, the people-to-people format. Increase the people-to-people connections, increase the relationship with the civil society representatives, increase the level of the cooperation with the grassroots of the civic society, educational institutions, universities, etc., etc. Just basically having those people-to-people, society-to-society type of the relationship could really increase the visibility of the European values and actually the implementation of the European values at a higher level. By escaping from the region, and unfortunately this is the case, escaping from the region slightly by most of the Western organizations, I'm counting here both NATO, Council of Europe, and EU as well. By escaping, I mean becoming less active in the region, we kind of providing a big room of the flexibility for our lovely neighbor in the north. So increasing, if there are difficulties to increase those level of the cooperation at the political level, then we should go to the social level, to the society level, and increase those cooperations, alignment, and then the structures at the society level and with the civil society organizations. Another part is about the rhetorics, and the rhetorics are really important. Rhetorics important not only with the while talking to the political leadership, but also while addressing the community, civil society organizations. And the rhetoric is to have an alignment approach to the similar issues, having the alignment position to the similar conflicts. And whether we like it or not, the frozen conflicts in the Eastern Partnership regions, this is the major threat. And these are the very sensitive points for the people in those countries. These are the really emotional points for the people in those countries. And the rhetorics, when we're talking about those frozen conflicts, should be carefully evaluated and then carefully really revised. Well, if we're talking about the frozen conflict, I'm mentioning like Abkhazia, Ossetia, Crimea, Prince-Rostov, and without mentioning Nagorno-Karabakh issue, it's not the right approach. If we're talking about the territorial integrity principle in the resolution of those conflicts, again, counting all other conflicts because of those, the Russia part of those conflicts and the Nagorno-Karabakh is different. Russia is not directly part of that conflict. It doesn't helpful. It's not really helpful in addressing the society, and it's not really helpful in the leveraging the European values, leveraging the European priorities in the society. And there is a ongoing tension of the actual having the, I would say, deficit of Europe. And I think the Eastern Partnership Program could really address to mitigate that deficit in Europe in those other three Eastern Partnership countries. I will pause here and we'll be happy to take the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bakhtiar. Exactly 7 minutes. Perfect. What came through the whole your presentation, and also it brings me back to other points from yesterday, is when you started on the citing like beginning of the journey and ending with the deficit of Europe, there is the concept of patience. I will be happy if afterwards we also, together with the audience, will challenge this patience, because the patience can't be forever. So we have to be patient, but there's like the time frame. Thank you. And now I will pass the floor to Karla Wursterova and she's the executive director of the International Visegrad Fund and has a long experience serving in diplomatic corps. So thank you, and Karla, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude that organizers selected International Visegrad Fund like a donor organization to be present in this panel. Maybe I would like to focus on the principles of 3C, communication, cooperation, and coordination, but I would like to underline efficient 3C principles. Secondly, I would like to underline that the International Visegrad Fund and V4 countries will continue with the support of all the 6 countries of Eastern Partnership. More for more, less for less can't mean that we will provide less support for civil society in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Belarus. And therefore, we will be committed and we will continue also in providing help for these 3 countries. International Visegrad Fund was created to support mainly internal cohesion of E4 countries. However, last year we provided 1/3 of our budget for countries of Eastern Partnership, and we would like to continue also in this regard and in this approach. Speaking about cooperation, what we are doing, which are best practices and lessons learned. First of all, we have to be more targeted. We have to go into the regions, into the countries of Eastern Partnership, really to speak to implementators, to local NGOs, local authorities as well, and react to all the needs which are basically in these countries. Flexibility is also needed. After the crisis in Ukraine, for example, V4 countries and International Visegrad Fund doubled its assistance. We supported more students and also more projects. Of course, we will continue in the support of basic priorities, like, for example, implementation of reforms, capacity building for NGOs, but also we would like to focus on several specific issues which were already mentioned, like, for example, crowdfunding or public-private partnership, but also very specific issues like, for example, security sector reform. What is the added value of V4 countries and the International Visegrad Fund? Basically, we are not supporting only bilateral projects, but also trilateral projects and regional projects. It means that on the one hand, we can transfer our know-how from our transformation period, but we would like to also involve several countries in our projects because they have also very fresh experience, and actually that is one of the outcomes of the working group 3. Secondly, what is very important to support education. Speaking about scholarships, we have totally different models as, for example, governmental scholarships. First of all, we haven't age limits. Secondly, we are supporting not only students of master and PhD degree, but also researchers. And actually, it was also one of the outcomes of the working group 4, capacity building in universities. So not only support of mobility of young people, but also focusing on the capacity building of universities. What is also very important is through scholarships, we can support only partially students. So therefore, we introduced a new instrument, Visegrad University Study Grant, which means that we can support universities directly in Eastern Partnership countries, and we can involve more students. What is also good that we are able to involve not only universities in capitals, but also in regions. We are more successful in Ukraine, and what is also good that universities from the eastern part of the country are very active. Coming back to scholars, again, to be present in the field, to have a very close communication with civic society is crucial. Thanks to these activities, we were able to host students from Eastern Ukraine and also IDPs from Crimea. Thirdly, it was also one of the outcomes, and previous panelists mentioned how important is the communication with local authorities, but also with line ministries. So basically, we started with the support of civic society and also of young people, mobility of young people and education. However, last year, we decided to introduce a new program, Civil Servants Mobility Program, and it means that we would like to provide very concrete training for civil servants. And just to give you an example, probably it is an efficient way to create a group and to mix regions, but also to mix representatives of line ministries and also local authorities. So we implemented this program for 2 countries, for Ukraine and for Moldova, but for Ukraine and Georgia, but we would like to implement it this year also for other countries. Speaking about communication, communication is needed not only toward Eastern Partnership countries, but also toward our public. There is still a low knowledge what is happening in Eastern Partnership countries, so therefore we would like to introduce also university programs and very specific projects in B4 countries. Again, it was already mentioned, communication with donors to avoid possible overlaps and to be more efficient. I am happy that we were able to create very close ties with the European Endowment for Democracy. Several governments, for example, the Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, United States, but we would like to more involve also skeptical countries like, for example, France. I am happy that today we have here several organizations and entities from Germany, but I'm still missing representatives from France. So basically we have several success stories. Of course we had also failures, but in a close cooperation and communication with civic society, I am convinced that we will be able to make our programs even more efficient.
Karla, thank you very much. I'm very happy that we started to touch upon, or also in a way came back to talking and involving of those who are more skeptical, or those who are like less to talk to, or who are more far and whose problems are maybe more south of Europe than east of Europe. And also particularly happy, and I think that it needs particular some comments and feedback from the audience, what Karla told about the different mobility programs they have at different levels, like the civil service, up from the civil servants down to the students. But let's leave that for after for the questions and answers session. And now, please, Richard Youngs, who is the senior associate with the Democracy and Rule of Law program at Carnegie Europe, and also, if not mistaken, the Professor of International Relations at Warwick University. Please.
Thank you, and I'm also very grateful for the invitation. I think if we're debating best practices in civil society support, for me the basic challenge is that civil society itself is evolving fast, and therefore civil society support needs to adjust to keep up to those changes. I think in that respect, donors need to do a number of things to make their civil society support more effective. My suggestions here echo a number of points that have already been made. Number one, perhaps the most urgent imperative, is to try to build more constructive bridges between what we might call new civic actors and the established NGO sector. You all know there's a lot of talk about the emergence of new social movements, whether these are good or bad for democratization. I think what we can say is that both new social movements and the established NGO sector have a role to play, but when there is too strong competition or rivalry between them, this can undermine the prospects for democratization. So I think a first challenge for civil society support is to build bridges between those two sectors. Number two, I think we need to be careful to ensure that civil society support doesn't go too overwhelmingly to pro-European civil society organizations. I think we need to be careful not to conflate pro-democratic civil society with pro-European civil society. Perhaps counterintuitively, I would say this means a little bit less orientation of civil society support to the monitoring of association agreements. The aim should be not a more pluralistic civil society rather than a pro-European civil society per se. Number three, try to engage with the sectors of civil society that are so far not engaged in politics. I think this means looking beyond traditional NGO activity. I think it involves trying to engage with younger potential voters through arts, cultural, new kinds of projects. I think as already been said, it means engaging with local grassroots organizations around very practical priorities. This doesn't mean taking politics out of civil society support, but I think it means building up political activism more organically from the bottom up. Fourth, there needs to be more focus on NGO laws, the enabling environment that was already talked about. The EU has moved some steps in this direction, but still needs to do more to get ahead of the curve and try and preempt more restrictive NGO laws where these are being devised. And I think this means that we need not just a little bit of extra money for capacity building of established NGOs, we need to mobilize the whole range of diplomatic instruments, not just EU but member states as well, to try and head off or mitigate, reduce the restrictions that are being introduced on the basic environment within which civil society organizations operate. Fifth, on information communications technology, ICT, you all know many people see this as being key to the future of civil society. To some extent this is true, but I think support needs to focus not just on helping established organizations incorporate ICT, but looking much more at the structure of ICT and how this affects civil society as a whole. In most countries, ICT still is only used to the benefit of a small proportion of the population, so more needs to be done to spread this far more widely so that its uptake is far more systematic. Seventh, and perhaps most importantly, given the challenge of political prisoners we've been talking about during the conference, I think the EU in particular needs some kind of early warning mechanism to deal with civil society activists in danger. There's been talk about this for many years, some relatively modest proposals moving in this direction, but I think, again, a far more systematic attempt on this needs to be pursued. Seventh and penultimately, I would say a big challenge is to try and link together support for traditional civil society organizations with the private sector. I think the private sector actors are still relatively underrepresented in civil society support activities. I think we all know that the key to reducing the influence of oligarchic vested interests in Eastern countries is to promote stronger independent private sector voices. And again, to me, this looks like a very underrepresented area of European activity at the moment. And then final suggestion is for us to promote more direct civil society to civil society links between the EU and the Eastern Partnership countries, rather than funds simply going from donors directly to civil society organization in Eastern Partnership countries. We all know that democracy is facing very serious challenges within European Union member states themselves. I think it would be useful to have projects that try to deal with these challenges that are internal to the EU in a way that links together more holistically with the challenges facing pluralistic politics in the Eastern Partnership countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I think your 9 points are really making headlines. At least these are part of them are definitely on Twitter circulating around. So the precise, short, and to the point. We are at the stage to open the floor for questions, comments, and your answers. Do I see already the hands up, or I see? Yeah, I see 2, 3. Let's start from that side, please. Let's collect 3 questions and then we go with the answers. So we have approximately half an hour.
Andris Gobiņš, European Movement in Latvian Economic and Social Committee. I would like to suggest, as several of you said, we need better links between the partnership countries and the EU networks, and that there are missing links, or it's even decreasing, as some people said. In the presentation of Mr. Šuško this morning, it was one of the suggestions in the resolution, which I think needs our all support and attention and as well lobbying, is that there would be a special budget line in the Eastern Partnership for Eastern Partnership NGOs to participate in the big network events and big networks on EU level. Women's Lobby, Youth Forum, pensioners organizations, scout organizations, there's family organizations, there's so many social organizations, education, there's so many big networks out there on EU level, which I think need direct links with Eastern Partnership countries to get first-hand information. As soon as the Eastern Partnership members would participate in these events, is it a General Assembly, is it a policy document or session where some documents are worked out, automatically there will be joint projects, better understanding on both sides from the needs, and you work on concrete topics as women's, as youth unemployment and other things. I think this should be a key priority in the review of the partnership, and I'm very glad that it is included in the final document here. But I think that this key needs still our joint lobbying. And the second thing which I just was thinking about, and which might be a focus sometime in future, and the question perhaps to the speakers, how much do you reach out to diaspora, which is as well in some aspects perhaps a potential, not a super first level priority, but I think there is great potential with the people who have emigrated in the recent years or even before, how to get their competence back to the work you're doing.
Thank you. Then the gentleman with the next question.
Arshot Arabicyan,
Respect International, the Netherlands. There is a very good practice of the United Nations. 2 years ago in Brazil, for example, at the Global Conference of the United Nations, they also organized a civil society forum. And at the key event that gathered 40 heads of states, there was first the announcement of the President of Brazil, then the Secretary General of the UN, and the third one to speak was a representative of the civil society, a young person who spoke about the work of the civil society. And I have to say that it was quite a tough speech. There were no compliments, no praise for the UN or the heads of states present. I think that such practice would be very relevant and could be used in the third civil society conference, because the resolution that we are going to adopt today will hardly be read by anybody. But at the event where heads of states are meeting and they can also hear the representative of the civil forum, it makes the heads of states understand its value. Thank you.
Lady next.
Hello, Maria Golubeva-Riga, think tank called Providus. I'd like to maybe suggest or ask the panel members to unwrap a little bit some of the things, some of the points made by Richard Youngs about particular availability of funding for different purposes, especially in terms of practical instruments which the European Union has. For example, how do you evaluate, or what's your take on the non-state actors' support for Europe aid, whether you find it's an efficient tool for developing civil society in the region, in the countries of the Eastern Partnership, whether you think something should be drastically changed there, for example, to include capacity building requirements, or to tailor it more towards those EU civil society organizations being able to participate and to lead projects, or to support local organizations in leading projects which are not very large and do not have massive bureaucratic or administrative capacity, because at the moment, of course, the critique of Europe aid is it is still very much tailored towards West European big NGOs, organizations like Save the Children get very many Europe Aid grants for managing projects in both Eastern Partnership and Central Asia. Smaller, for example, NGOs from those countries and also from Eastern Europe usually do not. So what can be done to change that?
Let's go for one more question.
Thank you. I'm Larissa Minasian from Open Society Foundations, Armenia. And thank you for very interesting presentations. I have a question to Mr. Young on several points he made, but particularly on two. The early warning for civil society in danger for European structures, I find particularly, unfortunately, particularly timely at these times, because we have civil society threatened in many countries. And political prisoners you mentioned as one, but I think that can be extended to certain groups as well. And I would very much appreciate your elaborating on how you see the mechanisms, because in countries, the European representatives often feel fatigue to be vocal on every issue. The narrative goes, we cannot respond to every event happening anti-democratic, and yet that's the most dangerous, one of the most dangerous fatigues I can say. And also your first point on bridges between new activism and established NGOs, we find as something constantly being challenged, very important in our countries, and a very challenging a very challenging concept. And yet bridging is exactly what is important, because the two are played against each other very skillfully, if not bridged. So if you can provide some kind of tips or thoughts for food for thought would be very appreciated. But basically, thank you all for a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, will you? And then the rest of the group.
Okay, I think most of the questions are, I think, inviting us to get into the real details of kind of redefining the institutional mechanisms, particularly at the European level. I think most mechanisms have begun to change, but the point I wanted to make was in these gatherings we normally talk about the administrative improvements that are needed to EU instruments. I think a lot of those recommendations are at least on the agenda. But the point I was trying to make is that I think the challenge goes beyond that. It's a more conceptual challenge in understanding the way that civil society is changing. And I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of understanding the magnitude of those changes, or just keeping up with the pace at which civil society is changing. So I think that really concrete recommendations would be the same kind of suggestions that we routinely hear: flexibility, more local capacity to identify partners, more flexible funding rules, etc., etc. But I think that needs to be accompanied by a better kind of conceptual capacity for understanding that civil society is not the same kind of beast that it was five years ago. And I think we don't yet have that. I mean, I don't have the kind of magical solution for what an early warning situation, early warning mechanism could look like. There is this situational awareness platform that is being built up in a fairly low-profile way at the moment. There are models there in various crisis situations, the Situation Centre and various other mechanisms that the EU has that could be adapted to focus more on civil society defenders, human rights defenders at risk. So there is some kind of incipient institutional capacity there that could be harnessed. I think that how to bridge the new and the old civil society activists, I think it just involves kind of stepping back and at least promoting dialogue between these kind of actors, not expecting that they will see everything eye to eye initially, but at least recognizing that it's a problem, and that we've had, in several countries, you have kind of putative democratic breakthroughs led by social movements that then don't carry the momentum through, and then we get into a situation where pro-transition momentum is lost simply because we haven't made enough effort to engage with these kind of new movements. And I think that's something that needs to be corrected.
Any more comments on? Yeah, please.
Concerning practical instruments and how to support local authorities, I know that instruments of European Union are rather difficult and it is not easy to apply, and mainly when you haven't a track record. So what I would like to recommend to start with a cooperation, for example, with European Endowment for Democracy or probably with the International Visegrad Fund to build capacities. And secondly, you should have also more active dialogue with EU delegation in capitals. I know that it is not easy. However, my recommendation is to start with EED and with donors like International Visegrad Fund. We are working on delegated cooperation. We are in discussion with the European Commission on the possibilities to delegate some programs, and we should regranting and also to provide this possibility. Coming back to the question of diaspora, I agree that we should involve more actively. Therefore, we started, for example, last year a very concrete cooperation with Canada. They have a huge and very active diaspora in Canada, and they are very active during the preparation of programs and the implementation of very concrete projects. So already the second year we are implementing together concrete programs and activities.
I also would like just to elaborate on that. I think there was a question about how we could better use and practice people-to-people, society-to-society, grassroots format. Obviously, I think one area of that cooperation, it is existing at the moment, first of all, and the one area we could even develop further is not try to build up and implement all of those programs, projects through the NGO sector only. Go directly to the institutions, liaise directly with the youth organizations, grassroots, use directly with the different educational organizations. And that could actually bring the existing people-to-people relationship to the higher level. The second area actually to really develop the communication. Recently, a colleague of mine from Poland actually, he sent out to me the 2 scholarship programs for the youngsters, for young students, for some research projects, developed especially for the Eastern Partnership countries. And that was not communicated in Azerbaijan at all. So there is a lack of the proper communication channels to use what is already existing in within the Eastern Partnership program. So the communication channels, and I would talk this morning, someone mentioned also the role of the social networks. So these communication areas using the social networks and approaching directly the organizations, educational groups, institutions directly could be actually another good example to move it further. Thank you.
Concerning EU assistance to civil society in Moldova, I will speak about our experience. Foreign Policy Association has been was created in 2004. Since then, we never applied to EU assistance as such. Why? Not because we don't want, but because the process is very complicated, it's very time-consuming, sometimes we don't have even capacities to apply. That's why we prefer small and medium projects, where the process of application is not taking more than 2-3 months. I mean, application and getting the grant. So far we had, among our partners, Visegrad Fund, Black Sea Trust for Regional Cooperation, Marshall Fund, Open Society Institute, many other EU countries, and also other donors. I think that EU should think very seriously about making the application process more, to adapt the application process to the civil society needs and capacities. and should be more responsive to our needs and the context, because the context is changing very rapidly. And we need, sometimes civil society organization has to be much more responsive to the needs we receive from local authorities, central authorities, and so on. This is the reality. We are not so happy with the application process for EU assistance provided by European Commission. At the same time, for the first time last year, we were involved, myself and my colleagues were involved in a EU technical assistance project provided to a so-called Bureau for Integration, which is dealing with Transnistrian settlement. We were involved as local advisors. It was a very useful experience for me personally, because actually I see that sometimes EU should use local experts, Moldovan experts, as team leaders of the projects, and not EU advisors. Sometimes, for instance, in our case, our EU project team leader used to travel all along the world for several weeks or even months, and then coming back in Moldova, and he has to be informed about the changing context on Transnistrian settlement, and he has to lead the project. No, I think that we have already good expertise on different areas, on human rights, on conflict settlement, already in Moldova. And the EU should have the courage and should promote local leaders if EU and Eastern Partnership wants to build a trustful, credible civil society as a partner to central and local authorities.
Also, some words about European Union support. I think that that the problem is not in a particular European Union institution support to their countries, but in their in this donor enterprise at all, because every institution, European Union institution, particular funds or like Visegrad funds, they are good in some sense. But all the system on their level sometimes very different, and these agents from these systems have quite different approaches towards their development in our countries, and this creates the situation of so-called divided civil society in our countries. And in some cases this is good, and this creates a pluralistic environment, and okay, but in case of, for example, Belarus or problematic countries there, we want to facilitate some transformation. This divided civil society serves more like element of stabilization of this system. So that's why I fully support Richard Young's proposal of conceptual debates about linkage between donor enterprise, civil society, and development and transformation as a whole.
So I think we are at the stage of collecting the next bunch of questions. So we had a question here on the front, and then one in the back, three in the back, fourth here. Okay, let's go.
I have one remark, because colleague says about women advocacy, and because Karla have some gender programs, projects. I was thinking all these days we have had very good presentation, and all times we have here 6 people, usually 5 men and 1 woman. even sometimes only 6 men. Very smart, of course, very nice. But not very gender sensitive, so please to be good with our values, to promote more our values and our examples. And I have a very big problem with my some wishes. I will be telling Russian because I think this is also большая проблема.
The big problem is that we wish to fulfill what mentioned Victor. When we come together to such big conferences, we are very interested. We have a large audience, and yesterday we even signed a document on behalf of the Moldova people. But when we go and return home, our voice is not heard, and we do not have strong links with people. Several years ago, we understood what we can do at present, also in rural area. We have to rely on voluntary work, because through voluntary work, people understand that they shouldn't be afraid of authoritarian regimes. And maybe Victor will tell us about this question. We have some books about Euro integration and how to make it that what is in the book, yes, to convey the idea to people, how to cover them, how you approach them, because at this session we have to give examples, case studies, not only questions.
It's tolerant about the long comments and questions for the next us, so please be short.
Hello, Cinziana Poiana from the European Commission. I just felt obliged maybe to react to some of the comments that were said here today. But I would like to begin with a question, because actually a number of your panelists have mentioned that not a lot of EU funding goes to supporting the transformative power of civil society in the countries where we work. And I guess that since I am really at the lowest level working on financial assistance for civil society organizations in the Eastern Partnership on behalf of the European Commission, I would really like to know more on the how, exactly how can we do that? And maybe this would also answer the donor-driven criticism that we keep hearing, and maybe just to take this opportunity to reassure you that yes, we are here to listen as well. So if we can start with the how can we do this? How can we foster early warning mechanisms based on fostering, basically capitalizing on capacity that lies in the civil society organizations in your countries? That would be much welcome. Now, on EU financial assistance instruments, I can go for a very long time speaking about this, but I won't.
30 seconds, sorry.
I won't. I would just like to mention that actually, as part of the civil society's efforts to lobby for more funding for civil society, the European Neighbourhood Instrument actually gives now quite a substantial allocation of money for capacity building projects. And again, since we are now in the process of designing this project, it will be quite useful to hear from you how this funding could trickle down to these local organizations that would be able to engage with the local government and to maybe foster more active citizenship and so on. And of course, I am here to react on maybe more punctual comments that were made. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a hand and a question over there, and then over there too, and that's it.
Hello, I'm Ines Vojka, advisor to Transparency International here from Latvia, and I would like to raise issue of geopolitical jealousy. So I would like to address it to Karla, and maybe others would have a reaction. The Baltic countries feel committed, very committed to the Eastern Partnership. You can see it through the two presidencies that are hosting the summits and issues raised. Our governments are also raising the issues and work and civil society. And so do Visegrad countries. And, but when you go to Poland, when I was in Poland, starting some of the Eastern Partnership dialogues, there is a feeling of, you know, if we in Poland don't do it, nothing will happen. We don't talk too much together, I think. And maybe we have this jealousy, you know, who will pioneer the Eastern Partnership, the progress of Ukraine, the partners or the neighbors or the former brothers of former Soviet Union. So maybe you have thought you already are doing something to talk, to coordinate, to inspire each other. And maybe if not now, since we are all in Riga, we can start and decide on some next few steps that will help us to be better partners in this. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have time for two more questions from that side of the hall.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter Sondergaard. I'm the Director of Programs at the European Endowment for Democracy. So I would like to echo some of the things that Richard mentioned about reaching out to new actors and building political support from the bottom up. This is something that EED has been put in place to do. So we are trying very much to do that and to reach out to new actors in that way. But, and I hope that this way that EED is working can also be an inspiration for other donors and for EU instruments to operate in a more flexible way. But we also acknowledge that it's very difficult to operate in that flexible way, and sometimes it's complicated to have such a flexible mandate as we have. But the point I wanted to make and the question I wanted to raise here was that the discussion now is focusing very much on technical issues, and it's also the way the title here has been phrased with capacity, instruments, good practice from the EU. And I think we're missing the political point, the question of political support to civil society, because for civil society actors in Belarus, Azerbaijan and Egypt right now, the issue might not be as much a question of finances, but also a question of moral and political support from the EU, which is very much missing. And it's extremely frustrating to interact with civil society activists in Azerbaijan and Egypt, especially in Egypt, who were at the headlines of the world press 3 years ago, and today are sitting in prison and hunger striking and are getting no attention at all. So I think this is a relevant issue to focus on, not only to get caught in the bureaucracy that there is, but see how actually that political support can be given to civil society, because otherwise there will be no new civil society actors that are ready to take the step into this world.
Okay, thank you. And the lady in the middle on that side. Yep.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Inga Zarafan, I am representing the information organization Kalur from Armenia. I am a bit surprised that we have been working for 2 days and nothing was told about the green movements, about ecological organization. Environment was excluded from our agenda. In Armenia, ecological or green movements, they are very active, because we are very concerned about water pollution, but we are looking at European countries, but they more or less settled this question. So the question is what to do in order to return ecological problems within the sphere of Eastern Partnership.
Approaching the line for the coffee and ending our session. And now let's do the way that each of our speakers have the opportunity to answer or the comment on the questions and comments from the audience, and by one also say if there are any of the final remarks from your side, and then we will be done and free to enjoy the drinks. Please, whoever volunteers.
Okay, so speaking about jealousy, I'm not a politician, I'm working on practical level and I can't feel it in everyday life. So I can underline that there is an excellent cooperation, not only in the project, but we were able to create also a platform, We4Think Visegrad. And they are very active not only in preparing very concrete analyses and papers, but also very concrete practical steps. Like, for example, when I mentioned the civil servants mobility program, when we are involving very actively also the civic society. But, for example, we were able also in a very short time to have a division of labor in Ukraine. So 4 countries agreed that they will be responsible, each country, for a very specific area. So really I don't feel it. And speaking generally about jealousy, we would like to support good ideas and good projects. Therefore, 2 years ago we decided totally open our grant schemes. So it means not only entities from V4 countries or Eastern Partnership countries, but for example also Baltic countries can apply. So I don't feel jealousy really on practical level, and I wouldn't like to speak about political level. Speaking about environmental organizations, of course, that is a huge priority, and I regret that we didn't mention, for example, ecological problems or, for example, empowerment of women. After visiting these countries, they are doing a great job and they are really very active. And I can confirm that, for example, during the transformation period of Central European countries, exactly these entities played a crucial and very active role, and they helped to change the situation dramatically.
Just 20 seconds on the how question. I think Peter makes the crucial point that it's not essentially just about fine-tuning EU mechanisms. I think the kind of ideas that are included in the ENP review process are very good ideas, and they seem to move in the right direction. But I'm not sure in themselves they're capable of addressing the really fundamental challenges in terms of the way that civil society is changing. For me, it's not just about slightly improving the implementation mechanisms for EU mechanisms, but harnessing a much more kind of comprehensive political engagement under the ENP on behalf of all member states, and realizing that civil society support is not a kind of minor substitute for high-level diplomatic engagement, that the two things need to go together. I think the Commission the EU has a lot of very interesting programs. Perhaps the one kind of overarching thing that could be changed is that the Commission does a lot of good things, but it tends to all be a little bit fragmented. And I would say, you mentioned the issue of capacity building for NGOs, which is something that should be upgraded, but it shouldn't be focused on in isolation from all the other things that the EU does in terms of reform priorities. Building private sector actors at the moment it is done, but it's kind of separate from the political agenda. And I think, as various speakers said, that these two things need to be joined together in a much more comprehensive way.
As a final remarks, I would like just to quote Mr. Carl Bildt, back in Vilnius in 2013, he mentioned a really interesting point. He said that when Mr. Putin makes you an offer, you cannot refuse. But when EU makes you an offer, you cannot understand. I definitely agree with the first part of that statement, will not comment on the second part. So in order not to come up in those regions in the Eastern Partnership, especially those 3 countries who didn't sign yet the association agreement, to the condition when Kremlin will make an offer which those countries will not resist to. So better at this stage to elaborate, to address the deficit of Europe that I just mentioned in my speech. And to do so, equally actively engaging with the civil society, but at the same time with the governments. With the governments, obviously, there are certain subjects, certain topics which they are not happy to talk to. So then probably maybe the good start could be actually start talking on the subjects, on the topics which they're happy. Let's start elaborating on the subjects which the governments are happy to take it further. And then move slightly to the topics of the misunderstanding, topics of the different approaches. But in any case, the deficit of Europe should be addressed immediately. Thank you.
First of all, about the remark of my colleague, Ms. Fonar, I have to recognize that we, in our association, we have an imbalance, gender imbalance, but not in favor of men. So it's, I'm a minority. Concerning your question about what we are doing, we have many examples. I mean, since 2008, we have a national radio program on foreign policy and European integration. And it can be listened by everybody in Moldova, now once in 2 weeks. Then, since last year, we are working more and more with local authorities. We started, many of you know that in order to get visa liberalization, Moldova had to approve anti-discrimination law. It was a very delicate issue in Moldova. We had discussions, but mainly we had different, a politicization of this discussion. And last year we started a project to explain to local authorities the law, and to explain that actually they have a role to play in implementing this law. And since last year, with the help of Embassy of Finland in Moldova, we have organized 18 trainings for local authorities. They are quite happy. They finally understood that the law is actually more broader than the Moldovan Church, Orthodox Church, explained to them. And now they want even deeper seminars, trainings, designed to change even internal regulations of the institutions. This year we'll start, because since 2007 we put, our guideline was to monitor, advocate, but also work with central authorities. We have had a very good relationship with Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Economy. Now we will start a concrete partnership with the Minister of Interior. Again, it's about discrimination, because we know that there are some cases, discrimination cases involving police, and now we are going to start discrimination trainings for our police in all over the country. Just several examples how we try to, even if we are a foreign policy association, but because in order to survive, we need to diversify our activities, of course, keeping focus on foreign policy and European integration, but also diversifying our portfolios in order to ensure the sustainability of our organization. Thank you.
Some words on effectiveness of and how to do EU support more effective. You know that don't be upset. I mean, European Union, that you are not so effective in transformation processes. Nobody is effective. At the global level, the discussion is going on that we are not reach development goals now, that we faced huge problems in this, so should we should reframe all these things and so on. But what is clear is that policy level should be linked to the aid more in detailed way. Because now, for example, in case of Belarus, it's a lot of contradictions in EU funding towards Belarus at all. For example, on one hand, there is a program and project to support independent civil society, and on the other hand, we have a huge program of supporting our government without any inclusion of civil society. And these programs partly are not effective because of exclusion of civil society from this program. A lot of funding, for example, to engage civil society goes to the international multilateral organization, for example, UNDP. But believe me, in Belarus, it's the best way to kill any effectiveness to support civil society and to get real effects of change, to give money to UNDP. And that's why we need to reframe the support in such a way that civil society could get more funding through channels of civil society. As well, we need to consult more civil society about the overall political and policy development in our countries. And the last point about Greens. Мы не сможем решить.
We will never be able to solve any problems in the environmental issues or in the self-government or in support of people with disabilities or social problems unless we solve the problem with democracy and human rights. This is just the key line.
Concluding sentence, Olena, you have 1 minute for the announcement on the working groups.
Dear participants, Olena Pristaika, Ukrainian think tank liaison office, and on behalf of 3 delegations, Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova, we would like to make a small announcement. We came up with the initiative of collecting signatures for support of membership applications from these 3 countries, and the flip charts and with the papers for collecting your papers are ready here in the lobby, and join us in this. Thank you.
And the final, it's the message from the organizer to reinforce the logistical part of your trip to airport. Please, those who are leaving today, show up at the welcome desk and see the times of departure. And that's really important, so you are being safe and sound brought on time to airport, because the access rules and the procedures have changed due to the incoming delegations of the heads of states and governments. And so take please it seriously, but then at this point I would like really warm thanks to all of us for engagement and sharing your expertise, concerns, and let's go for some coffee. Thank you.